All right,
Right,
let's go
we're
ahead,
live.
let's go ahead and kick this off then. Appreciate everybody coming in for our fall retreat. It's a great opportunity to get staff here and the council here to take a really good look at the current status of the city. And also to do, we're gonna do a preliminary look at the budget for 24, to talk about our capital facilities plan, to talk about just some of the big projects that we have going on in the city, not only currently, but where we want to go in the future. So it gives us an opportunity to all sit in the same room for the day and really get a lot of good work done. I want to say thank you to the staff, the clerks, and all the directors who have put a lot of time into the products that you're looking at today. And a lot of the thought process has been going on. So I don't want to be a politician and talk a lot. So let's kick this off with. I think we're starting off on here. Good.
All right here, Tanya.
Let's go on in. We are gonna start the presentation for the staffing plan in just a second, but Caitlin's got paper copies of all of the org charts in a larger format for the next one. You can pass them.
This meeting going to be recorded.
It's audio, so we're audio recording it on Zoom, and then whatever's being presented is being shown on Zoom. But the video, there's no video recording of us. That makes sense.
So the public can't listen to it later.
They'll be able to listen to it and see the presentation.
Sorry.
Yeah, they'll be able to listen to it and see the presentation material.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That being said, this is the microphone, so if everyone could talk up a little bit, that would be great. Thank you.
Here's a hearing. I'm hearing on Zoom and.
Right. How do I show it up here?
Move that up there.
Oh, I
Right
see.
there.
No, it's fine.
Hold on. Everything should come on. So I'm just not hearing audio on.
I just tested YouTube and I was hearing it as well, so.
Oh, there we go. Great.
So, as council aware, since 2020, we've been doing a staffing plan. So we've been doing a staffing plan since about 2020 we've been meeting with the department heads annually to discuss staffing needs and projections based on operational needs, maintenance, growth of the city, as we've been growing. So things that we've done to questions we've asked department heads is what do we need to be getting done that we're not getting done, and what are things that we want to get done. And then we look at succession planning, we look at upcoming retirements and separations, overall come up with a strategy over the next 5 years. So this plan today is from 2024 through 2028. And moving forward, we'll be continuing to do this around the same time right before budget season, so you are aware, and going into the mayor's budget later, knowledgeable about the staffing requests and why. So just a current overview of the citywide org chart. Have that in your packet, so I'm just gonna go to the next screen really quick. With some statistics. So right now we have a total of 125 funded FTEs, and here's the breakdown by department. We have 10 vacant funded positions currently, and this does not include seasonal positions, but 6 seasonal positions as well. So far year to date, we have hired 28 employees. We promoted 4 and we've separated 19. So there's some statistics for you. any questions about current, go back one slide, so you can visually see it again. You know, kind of the work structure, it's very easy as we're growing. It's getting harder.
On the current, you have, looks like 3 temporary positions. Are those currently filled or are they mostly?
I believe we have a few seasonal skills, 2 of them. 2 in parks. 2 in parks right now, and Aaron, how many seasonal skills? One.
It's just one.
I have one. Now, most of them have come back to school. A lot of them are college students that will leave right around.
So in parks, you have 4 that could be there, but we only have 2. And then in that works is usually 2, but we have 1.
Yes, the seasonals only run 5 months out of the year, usually May to October, May to September.
And then the policy analyst,
The policy analyst, that's a vacant, it's an unfunded position, and that was a few years ago. What we brought to council a few years ago was a position that would help the city do some policy work and administration. That project was specifically for safety policies, and that person was like a retired person that came in and helped us get policies up and running. And we've kept that on the org chart as an unfunded position and only allowed to fill it if there is a need, and we have salary savings available. So it just remains on there.
thank you.
So what we're gonna do now is each department head is gonna present their strategic staffing plan for the next 5 years, and we're gonna go from largest to smallest department. And that's what- with that, I will hand it over to G.
So, this is the org chart, as you can see here. We are down right now 5 positions. We do have a promotion to a vacant sergeant's position that we plan on doing. We just got an assessment center done this past Monday and Tuesday. We got the results yesterday. So we will be moving into all the sergeant's positions being filled. Sergeant Hennon is moving into investigative services. As we grow, we are seeing a trend of public disclosure requests going up, and we have body worn cameras now. So in the future, as we look at that, is looking at adding a supervisor. She was back. Okay, there we go. Adding a supervisor to that side and moving over and putting our body worn camera public disclosure request under that unit. And then having our records unit handle the daily case reports, CPLs, all of the original stuff in the future. Yeah. Thank you. And then also looking at, instead of, if we do add an officer, that we added and we put a traffic officer. As you know, we've had 4 fatality collisions in the last 2 years. 3 of those have been called vehicular homicides or vehicular assaults. In addition to that, so having another traffic unit would be a request because of the increase of training that they need. I am the only one in the agency right now that can investigate a fatal collision involving a vehicular homicide because of my training. Nobody else has been certified yet. So it tells you how desperate we are to get these people up and running and trained. So in the future, we're looking at a PROACT sergeant to do a span of control over their support services sergeant. Right now, he's in charge of facilities training, fleet, SRO program, field training. He's getting a little bit overwhelmed. So what we'd like to do is add a support services commander to manage those programs and allow him to be just the supervisor of the programs. And then 2026 added 2 additional officers to meet the growth of the city and legal requirements, legislation requirements with all the training we have to do. I sat in 8 hours of training myself yesterday to meet the mandated training requests that was going on. They just keep adding more and more training. And then in 2027 is looking to support the regional task force, because the regional task force for auto theft, violent offenders task force, and the drug task force are requesting additional bodies. We do it as a regional asset, because there's, you know, with all the staffing problems that we do have, we all try to participate. And then establish, like I said, in 2027, to establish a supervisor and move my public disclosure stuff into one unit and allow them to work together with the evidence officer, because it's all connected. When public disclosure comes in, our evidence officers involved in it, because the digital evidence and all that stuff, and keeping that streamlined. And then eventually adding an administrative assistance to support our support services division, because we have an investigation unit, support services unit. And the support services commander, they all need an assistant to allow them to do their work, so.
Go back to the last slide. Just highlight really quickly, last year during budget discussions, it was the council's direction to add 2 officers if we can fill all the vacancies. We have not yet to fill all the vacancies, so I did put those positions as a little shadow, as a reminder. The chief is not requesting additional positions this year for patrol, he's requesting an officer. So just keep that in mind.
Just so I'm clear, so the 2 police officers
In this orange color.
in the orange color. Are you saying instead of, you still want to keep those there and then also add the traffic officer?
We asked for, you guys gave me the authorization if I filled all of the positions to come back to you to do a budget amendment and do 2 additional officers. Unfortunately, I've hired quite a few officers, but we've had quite a few retirements. We have another retirement coming up in November.
Okay.
And so, and then another one probably pending right after that, so we're gonna lose 2 more officers, so I will be down about 7 officers.
But the proposal is
But
to
the
keep
proposal
those
is-
2 there. I mean, keep the,
Yeah, that would be great. But the traffic officer is what's important because of the tag and the requirements of the training and stuff like that, so. I don't know, they were never in the budget, they were just said if we come back, we need to do it in a budget in a minute, so,
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank
does
you.
that make sense?
Yep.
All right.
There is no budget request for them, for staff.
Got it.
And there is no plan to put them in the budget unless that's coupled with.
They were the placeholder, that if a truckload of
Yep,
20 cops showed up. and
Mhm.
wanted a
That's
job,
one, yeah,
we had a
right,
place for 'em.
right, okay.
So you're rescinding the placeholder.
No, I think,
We're gonna keep the placeholder there, so if that does happen, we can get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any more questions for the police? Moving on to public works. Aaron.
Yes. Morning, everyone. There are a few additions to the public works work chart proposed for the 24 budget. One is a field supervisor in facilities. The idea is we have more facilities than we've obviously ever had. And we're potentially contemplating expanding our facilities. We're eager to improve our level of service. And, the way that we can do that is making sure that we have the leadership and facilities, the field supervisor to do that work. Currently,
Aaron, just in case the council, some of the council don't know, can you tell them what the facilities does?
what the facilities does. Sure. Well, the city has obviously many facilities throughout the city, and the facilities team maintains those. So they do their janitorial services, and they also do dust abatement. We're doing a little bit of that. They paint the walls, they fix damage, they replace appliances, they set up the council chambers, and break it down. They do just a wide variety of facilities maintenance tasks, and it's a surprising amount of work. Maybe it's not surprising, it's a lot of work. And so currently, what we do now is we break team members out of the streets team to go maintain facilities. That maintain facilities outside of janitorial services. So if we have an issue with pest, we ask our streets team to go do the work in the facilities, and they're pulled away from the streets. So what this will do is create a separate division within Public Works by creating a field supervisor position, moving a maintenance worker from streets to facilities. So there's a dedicated team doing that work every day.
I'll add to that is our goal for span control for supervision is 5 to 7, and Justin in the streets department is at 9 currently. We're gonna add the seasonals in the proposal, which is adding seasonals to streets and facilities. We're really putting it in a really close situation to monitor and supervise staff effectively and making sure we're auditing tasks and whatnot. So that's why the level of supervision, that's why we're asking for a supervisor versus a lead. Because a lead is leading the daily work and executing and making sure that work's getting done, but they're not doing performance evaluations and check-ins and they don't have as much authority as that supervisor would have. That's why it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, in addition, there's a seasonal within facilities. We get a lot of, get exceptional value from seasonals. And in addition, facilities are also used for it during the summer. It just makes sense to have a seasonal facilities. We're asking for 2 additional seasonals for streets. Oh, it's streets and facilities. Those seasonals would be responsible for vegetation maintenance. We have a lot of, obviously, we have a lot of vegetation that grows into the right of way during the summer. They will help with that. That is it's lower level work that seasonals can do. Helps. There's a, do you want me to cover the 25, 27 as well?
But yes.
Okay. There's a fleet manager, lead equipment mechanic addition. The city has over 90 pieces of equipment and fleet vehicles. We have we have 1 mechanic to maintain all of them. So I was out in the shop yesterday. The mechanic is replacing the tracks on an excavator, which is not an easy thing to do. And Streets comes in with a mower. It has a bearing that has a, he's got to stop working on the excavator and work on the mower. And the excavator is going to sit there. It's a high value piece of equipment. It's going to sit in the shop while he fixes the mower. That's okay, but he's alone in that shop. And he really needs, we need to provide a higher level of service. There. Okay, and then the last position, well, not the last position. The position that's pink is the traffic engineer signal technician. When the city's population is large enough, we'll be required to maintain the traffic signals in the city. That's just it's an obligation to see on the horizon. So it's planned for the 2028.
Who currently maintains them?
The county does.
All of our signals in the city?
Correct. Yeah, DOT does the highway signals.
So how does that transfer take place?
How does that transfer take place?
You got street signals in 20th Street.
Sure.
What do you, the county says we're done?
Essentially, yeah, I mean, there's a transition period, but essentially the county said, we're done, we're large enough to maintain your signals. Here you go. Here's the
Is
technology.
there any indication that that's, like, how do we know that's coming?
How do
We hit 50,000.
that's,
Oh, great, okay,
We have a number.
good.
yeah. Yeah,
Any
we
idea what that cost will be?
the cost of the signals.
Yeah, to maintain this. I mean, they're obviously on a replacement cycle.
Yes. Well, that's a really good question. I've been working a little bit with Troy on upgrading that technology, or at least considering upgrading that technology. I'll gather that data and get that. I wouldn't want to give you a number that's not accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a cost to the city or to the county for maintaining the signals?
Yes, there is. We have an ILA with the county. They send us monthly invoices. It's not a high cost. I don't know. offhand.
It was like $2,000 early.
I guess along with that, Aaron, would be, I mean, are we required to take those over, or can we contract with the county to continue to maintain them?
We could potentially do that. Yeah, I think that the city of Monroe does that.
Yeah, I think so. I think.
Okay. There is the potential to do that. Yeah. Either way, the cost is gonna change.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
We always have the opportunity to contract the outside parties.
Yeah.
A lot of electrical companies that do that work under contract with state and county already, so you have that as.
Yeah. But another advantage of a traffic engineer is to deal with the traffic calming problems that cost them. So you would have the signal technician in traffic that would be dealing with the signal, but the same person would be dealing with our traffic calming. Needs some attention.
And you know, and I'm not saying it needs to be done now, but I think last year we had a light out at Market and 91st. And we were 4-way stopping it like a day and a half, wasn't it? Like it was a long time. That's just because the county will respond when the county comes out, right?
So would a signal technician also to maintain the signals, the light signals for crosswalks? Would that fall under that?
Yes.
All right. Later on, I want to bring something up that we need to add.
Okay. The last position is a to be determined position, and it's a deputy public works director. As the public works organization grows, a lot more leadership within public works. We have large responsibility for lanes, roadways, and facilities in the city. There's going to be a need for a second command in public works.
Out on slide 8, it's up right now, it does say establishment of senior commander 2027, and that, on that slide, we actually just filled that this year, so that's an error on there, but it does not reflect that. Any other questions for Melissa?
I have a quick question on the mechanic position. Is it a personnel bottleneck, or would we have to expand facilities, tools, other maintenance equipment to go along with that additional person?
Really good question. I don't think we have a space needs right now.
Okay.
We have 2 vehicle lifts, clean shop space, we have some area fabricating. Spaces.
Something that digs at my mind a little bit when you say he's alone. Is that a safety issue? For somebody to be in the shop working on equipment with nobody there back?
When he's working, for example, when he's working on the excavator, he has somebody helping. So we do try to balance that. But if he's working on a mower, yeah. But what that means is we're pulling something from the field to.
Right.
Moving on to community development. Press.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to try to keep the department fairly static over the next few years, really trying to watch our land supply so we don't bring on too many staff. But what we have seen is our development reviews are changing. A lot more tenant improvements, reuse of commercial buildings, a lot of remodels, single family homes. So we see an increase there, but obviously there's been well, I can't say there's been a decrease yet of new platting because that's still happening, but we know there's a finite land supply for new large development. So we are trying to be cognizant of that. But what we have been doing is, and this has been over the last few years, really identifying internal candidates and making sure we provide some room for growth. So you'll see that reflected in this year's budget that we are putting in a couple of placeholders for some intermediate growth for current staff members. For example, one of those would be in our inspectors. Right now, we have 2 inspector 1s. In the past, we've had an inspector 2 and an inspector 1. So we do, based on credentials and certifications, we potentially have an internal candidate that we'd like to reward. And then that helps with a little bit of the span of control for the building official, if someone can be there to make sure that all the inspections are lined up correctly for the day, act as kind of a lead, and take on some light plan review duties to support the plans examiner. So that's one example that we can do a low cost internal improvement. Also looking at the span of control overall in the building division, as that is now the building official has more direct reports in the department than anybody else. And so at some point, we do need to evaluate that. We currently have a lead for the permit staff. And we looked at a couple of years ago, a lead versus a supervisor. At the time, the lead position became most appropriate, but that's something we could look at again in the future. Again, for span of control, that you create a separate division that goes from a lead to a supervisor. On the planning side, same thing, looking at creating maybe a planner position. That would be a planner 3, and that would be journey level type tasks. So again, if we have an opportunity for some internal growth, we will do that. The only new ask we have in this cycle is for an administrative assistant. This has been on the ask list for lots of years. As one of the larger departments, we just don't have that administrative support, which which means myself, the building official, and the planning manager, we're taking time away to do billing, coding, setting up training, travel, all of those little tasks that add up and take you away from core functions, contract administration, et cetera. So that is on the request again for 2024. And we think that helps streamline the whole operation. We do have another assistant planner that's on the list as a to be determined. And that was really looking at our annexation growth and what were we going to see with annexation if we needed to add another person. Right now, again, we're still holding. I'm not gonna kid you, my team is super busy. Super busy. But again, looking forward, is it fair to bring somebody on that we may not need in 2 to 5 years? So really trying to be cognizant of that. If we talk beyond sort of this 5-year lookout, other positions I could see would be a second code enforcement officer at one time. Again, as our population grows, we went from a half-time to a full-time code enforcement officer, and he's busy every day, all day. So like I say, at some point on the horizon, I'm sure that's another need to talk about. But for right now, we're just trying to keep it fairly static and look to where we could do some small internal improvements to improve efficiency and help with a little bit of span of control.
Questions for Russ?
Thank you. Recreation Department. We have now officially been established for 13 months. Over that time, we've done heavy analysis out in the field and crunched a lot of data. We didn't want to make decisions with budget last year, not seeing a full cycle and really understanding how the ebb and flow of work goes, as well as staff. With the analysis that we did in the field, we determined that we were 2.2 FTE short in order to keep up with the standards today that we would need to. That does not include seasonals. Of course, we are approved for up to 4 seasonals for 5 months. However, this year we only were able to fill all 4 positions for a total of 6 weeks. And so you have a large bell curve with trying to attract people and then keeping them, especially as you have to wait for summer and people are then going back to college. So it's really hard to fill seasonals for that entire time. But with that, we are asking for 1 park ranger and 1 parks maintenance worker for the 2024 budget. The park ranger was the preferred request from the field. The reason why is they would be able to more easily work the weekends, and then especially in the summer, the afternoon shifts when people are using the park. This could help promote better PR, getting to know especially the younger generation that are continually in the park, encouraging good use of the parks, reducing vandalism. If we can reduce vandalism and negative behaviors in the park, we're alleviating the response from police officers and then the aftermath that the park staff are having to deal with paying to repair vandalism and the time that they spend on vandalism. With the crew worker, we would be asking to add 1. They would just be doing the normal functions of a crew worker, which involves everything from picking up trash, mowing, planting, light repairs on buildings, the normal repair stuff. As we start moving out towards 2025, the future staffing plan is all based on growth. We know next year in the capital plan, we have Frontier Heights 2 that's going to be completed, as well as the 20th Ball Field Trail that's being built out. We estimate needing another 1 full-time equivalent in order to cover that. As we continue to move forward in the future, we have Eagle Ridge Park, which is estimated to need a 1/4 full-time equivalent. And then if and when we ever do take over county parks, there would be FTE requirements there. That estimate would be 1 for Lake Stevens Community Park. Cavallaro would need a half-time, and Cedarwood may need a 0.25, although although that could also be facilities techs. We haven't quite worked out the future maintenance of that building or the groundskeeping. So the 2.2 would bring us up to par for where we are today with needs. And from there, the future growth. One thing we did was we didn't include the overtime need of special events, but or weekend shifts. We know every time somebody has a day off on a Saturday, we're having to put out that overtime shift. For all overtime shifts, it goes out to both public works and parks crew workers. We share that equally, and due to that, we weren't able to quite break down how many hours are actually spent on parks versus the other things. We do share staff back and forth between our departments for things like lake maintenance. Every time we take the boat out, we have rules that require 3 people to be on the boat, 1 to operate it, 2 to do the buoys or remove hazards, to keep the workers safe. We do pull that from the streets and storm team as well.
Would the park ranger have authority to trespass?
It would be limited authority. Yes, they would be able to trespass. But of course, when you're not a full-time officer, it can be harder to demand a license and get compliance. And so they would more be PR gaining compliance through persuasion, and then would need to call for backup if they weren't able to resolve it. But usually with verbal judo, we have great success in talking.
Sarah, cost benefit analysis, you indicated the vandalism. You have a dollar amount of how much vandalism occurred in our parks this last year.
I don't have that now, but I can get it for you. We did build out a number of different codes with the support of finance so that vandalism has its own line item now. And that only took place shortly after budget took last year. So there were a few months where items weren't moved over.
Was it significant?
I'm gonna have to look at the numbers. Yes. I think more than the dollar amount, it's probably the amount of hours spent in time.
More than dollar.
How
Well,
much?
there is a cost to the hours spent, so I guess.
It would be
It-
hours and
Yeah, the hours taken away from the other maintenance. And often when we do need repairs, if it's something out of our specialty, for instance, the fence was ripped out at Davies. That took over a month to repair. We weren't able to recoup the cost from the person who vandalized. And due to procurement policy, it took us a lot of admin hours to get that done.
I just, again, balancing park ranger, if we can alleviate some of those costs by having a staff person on site to do that, it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, and I'm looking up vandalism dollars right now to see what we were able to code to it. It looks like from the time we started coding, it was about $8,000. And that was as of about a month ago.
And that's just in the, like,
Material
repair material, that doesn't include any sort of stuff.
And that doesn't include if we contracted it out, that would be the stuff we did in-house.
Well, you talk about a fence, I mean, we could spend $8,000 on a fence. What, it's gotta be more than that.
That one was a contracted service. What happens is with budget coding, you have supplies separate from contract services. And so we would have to do a little bit of an audit, but I can bring those numbers back for the future.
I just, it would seem to me we got vandalism going on in the restrooms, just general damage, to facilities, things of that sort. I would anticipate it's a lot higher than $8,000.
I agree that it's just the numbers I have for that specific line item, but I can bring back
Okay.
more realistic numbers.
All right. It's all going by the order of the papers. Okay, so we did have some requests that we just be pushing out every year. We did have a request in 2023 for in our staffing, strategic staffing plan for additional accountants. We did move those out to 2024, and I'm again moving them out. We are
pretty well functioning. There are a lot of things that we're unable to dig deeper into when it comes to the treasury management side of things. So debt and investments, all of our investments are LGIP, and so it's the simplest cash management way to invest. So we don't have any multi-year investments, additional things like that. That's one of the things that would be good for us as we grow to look closer at our debts and investments. Procurement purchasing was probably the one that would have come forward first, as it is helpful citywide. Looking at all the compliance issues, we talked about the procurement policy, actually following all of the laws and regulations in the state of Washington are very complicated and confusing. Right now, our capital project grant person does a really good job of being that procurement person for us, but it really is a full-time job just to do that. The things that we ran into this year were their oddities. It's like it's prevailing wage. Does a contractor have to pay prevailing wage on a load of dirt? Well, it depends. Did they drop it off at the shop? Then no. If they dropped it off at the actual development or project, yes. Same thing we ran into with like the lock people. If they change out a key to the lock, then no, not prevailing wage. If they change out the handle, yes, prevailing wage. It's very complicated things in Washington state. And so this is one of the things that we're trying to get a better handle on. I know Matthew is here today with us as well. You know him, he's our finance manager. He and actually Director Halverson have been working on updating some procurement policy flow charts and things to kind of help make these a little easier. But it is still pretty complicated. Council a couple of years ago did make it a lot easier for staff to do the business that they need to do. Because we're a code city over 20,000, council can make a lot of our own rules for things like professional services, that kind of thing. And so our purchasing levels are higher than in a lot of the smaller cities. They have to go out to bid for things that are, $10,000, whereas we don't have to until it's $50,000, things like that. So we've done as much as we can to be as lenient and allow business to actually happen in the city. But it is still a very complicated procedure, whether it's a public work or not. So that's one of the things we've looked at. Another one we kind of talked about again this year is budget analysis. We have a pretty robust budget at this point. We're growing, obviously adding departments, adding divisions, and it is difficult for me to handle everything that's coming in and keeping track of everything. The budget analysis person could help with community outreach, doing surveys, looking at what is the community needs, bringing that in a little bit better. We really don't get a whole lot of community input on our budgets. We kind of talked about this year using Zen City, but we need, what are the questions we need to go out and ask? What are those kind of things? And cities who have gone out and done those types of things, it's multi-month process, usually with a consultant, to determine how do you gain the right information? How do you bring in the right information? What do you do with that information once you get it? How does that work with helping prioritization in the city? So those kind of things are what we're looking for in the future. Something I just keep holding off on is the sewer district. We talk about the sewer district. At some point, we will have the sewer district be assumed by the city, and they have a number of accountants that will absorb in, and we will sort of reconfigure how they are set up in the system. They have utility billing people. They will probably remain utility billing people at least part of the time. Part of the time, we will actually allocate them to helping with some of these procurement things. They're doing procurement, they're doing grants, they're doing all these things. And so we don't want to overstaff and then have these positions come in and not know what to do once we have them. And so I do just as we are, my finance department is fantastic. We do with what we have. One of the things that we have looked at is our payroll. I know our payroll person accountant had retired after so many years with us. So that was hard. We do have a great payroll accountant now. She is fantastic, but we have definitely realized that
once we get to a certain point with employees, we're going to need at least a half-time payroll tech to come in and help just to bring in the time sheets, and we do have all that electronically, so do all the time sheet stuff and help with that. And so that's one of the things we have on here that once we reach about 150 FTEs, which would likely happen as soon as we do the sewer district, or if the sewer district's out, the more obviously employees we add with just the budget request, we're definitely gonna need to do that. And so we kind of have it in there as a TBD. We're not sure if that's 2024, 2025. At some point, we're gonna have to look at doing that. So at this point, I don't have any requests in for 2024. Just keep in mind there are a lot of needs there, but as the finance people, we're very conservative. and so we just keep pushing everything out. So
I appreciate looking towards assumption of the sewer district and that staff. Saving room for staff that are gonna come over. I assume they also have their own payroll issues. So
they actually contract with the county, but they do have somebody who collects the data to send over. Unfortunately, I think it's their HR person who does that. It's
so they wouldn't be potentially filling that payroll position with someone already.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm still looking at, like, we're kind of going through the positions that they have there, how they work in, what are their qualifications, how would they actually fit? Would they just come over as the position they're already in, or is there additional things that we can, allocate to those? And so we are thinking there should be somebody over on that side who could help with the payroll and the benefits and that kind of thing as a whole. But again, it's still a little unknown.
So who takes care of our inventory control and asset management now?
Right now, Matthew and Adri are sort of in charge of the upper level. When it comes to actually doing annual audits, the departments do their annual audits and then, or do their annual inventories, and then we go out and audit them. So it's just done by the staff we have.
When Barb speaks about payroll, remember you've got sick leave requests, and vacation requests, payouts, all that stuff goes through that payroll department. And it's a lot. We have 120 some employees called sick, like I said. Different requests for getting loans, right? You go out and get a loan, you've got to be able to provide proof of employment, payroll and all that. That's all that part.
Yeah, and the more pay codes we have,
I was
so
just gonna say you're
all of the
overtime.
wonderful things that we do with, longevity and vacation cash outs and sick accruals and all of these additional things are all pay codes that are nice and complex. And I appreciate, Jean, you bringing that up, because I'm not very good at selling all of the details of what we do. It's just, it's part of the job. We do the job, we move forward, we go on. And so we're always looking at what are the bigger things that we can express to council as how much work we're doing, but it really is all the details. Like there isn't, we talk about if there's time for Adri to help with records management, or is there time for payroll? It may be 4 hours a week could potentially go to helping do something else. Payroll, nothing at all. We've got Jessica doing a lot of stuff right now, doing capital projects and like I said, procurement and everything else on top of it. And we do really well, but we are, we're starting now looking at grants, the federal requirements for the federal grant we're coming next year. So we haven't had a big federal grant. So it's like, we're starting now. What does this look like? Let's get prepared. Let's get organized. So when it happens, we're not caught off guard. And so it's a lot of compliance in finance for us. So
I will add that another one is the contract administration. Currently, we have 3 agreements and the employee handbook is not represented. And every time there's a difference of benefit or longevity or specialty pay or group, that's an extra thing that payroll that has to execute or audit. And so what we have been trying to do the last 3 years and each cycle of contract negotiations is try to bring those in alignment. And so it's less complex for payroll. And so I think police is a different animal. They've got lots of specialties and lots going on all the time and moving in and out. But I mean, as far as like Teamsters and the Guild non-commissioned, we've been trying to align those. Huh? AT, go ahead.
So, yeah, this year, as far as our staff request, we've been putting it forward, is what everyone's been saying. The city's been growing, the delta change has been high. As we get in all these employees coming on, there's a lot of this offboard gas data management that's been taking place, and this year's been probably the highest we've seen. Parks came in and stayed a little bit. That's procurement, device provisioning, user provisioning, people provisioning. That delta has been pretty high, and what that does, that means the help desk started to get pretty loaded up, and the time for resolution starts to take more time to get that done. And when we're dealing with a lot of the changes that are taking place in the environment, we had some pretty significant challenges this year with hardware failure, and that basically, we've been running very lean, like Barb says, we're very conservative. I've been very conservative as far as like staff and all that kind of stuff. So. What we're finding is that we have all these special projects from the different departments that they're needing, and Alec is doing a really good job. He's trying to work on those projects, but when you have to have focused time on that, it really kind of takes away from what you can really focus on helping the support tech. It's those small, low level stuff. So we kind of put in a request for a help desk position on the wind tower. I just lost it. So yeah, we put in for that help desk position, kind of help take care of the low level help desk role on that, and then bringing up Alex to be able to focus on more of the configuration, the tooling that we need to get in place, and he's also helping out some more of the infrastructure challenges that we've been facing. The other request we put in this year is the security halftime security analyst with finance, PD, HR, the regulatory compliance issues just are increasing. New regulations coming out that are forcing us to adopt new frameworks and policy governance and bringing things into a more formalized maturity model. There's so much technical debt to try to get a lot of these things established. We're still trying to get our tooling in place, and we just need additional help, someone that can help to do the work of looking through the logs, threat assessments, these assessing the third-party vendor assessments, you name it. There's a lot that we have to have in place, and we're trying to get that in place. And we think that the halftime analyst or security analyst will help us to get a lot of those primary things done. And that's our biggest priority that I see on our list right now. So that's what we have requested this year. In the future, as the department's been growing, an operations manager to kind of oversee the different departments and doing high level priority, work assignments, capacity planning, infrastructure, overseeing the infrastructure and the staffing there. Then as we have been moving into more of the smart city kind of initiatives, there's going to be more systems, devices, IoT. Sewer district coming on, there's going to be SCADA systems. So at some point, we're going to have additional people that kind of help out with those things. So we kind of just proceed that as another position there. So, but yeah, those are kind of what we're looking at.
I will add that the help desk position is going to be really critical, especially when we assume the sewer district, because they currently contract with Snohomish County for IT and support. And so taking on additional 30 staff is with their complexity of what they have running in their programs is going to be crucial.
They run SCADA systems, which is computer controlled systems for the treatment plant, all the pump stations. It's all SCADA control, basically run from a computer. Specialty work that we don't currently have. So we'll have to have somebody in-house work contract. They use contract right now to do that work. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. The security, halftime security analyst. I know in some industries hiring a part-time person is next to impossible. Do we have any sense of whether or not there are people interested or willing in part-time positions in that?
We do, and I have a candidate that I think is going to be able to fit that role, that will be able to do that position. So, but yeah, we'll be putting that position out there and seeing what we can get. We have a managed detection response, but they, our lead time from when they give us an alert that we need to investigate, it could be 12 minutes. 12 minutes is too fast, it's too late. There's a lot of lateral that can happen in 12 minutes. There's a lot of things that we have to try to do to get our tooling to be able to respond faster to those events. And having someone that can develop those toolings in place. I think that's the augmentation of that, support contract with security. So we have a managed security provider that's doing the 24/7 monitoring, but having someone that is able to help, work that workflow. I think the health cam will work until we see that probably when SCADA comes in or something like that, or some additional requirements for the sewer district, that position may become full time maybe. So thank you.
So in HR, the biggest gap we have currently is training. And how I'd like to address that is adding a safety / training coordinator. And what this position would really do is help facilitate and oversee citywide training programs. They would help with departments and supervisors with mentorship program, succession planning, onboarding. We're constantly getting an increase of need for facilitation for different departments as we've brought in staffing. Training is also a huge liability for the city, so we need to really make sure that our staff is properly trained on onboarding. We have annual program that are, we have current safety requirements we have to do annual training for. And then ongoing training to make sure that we have, I would say, remedial training or reminding training, like customer service, for example. You give customer service training to an individual at onboarding, but we also need to make sure we deliver that in a program like either annually or every few years. And so we're kind of lacking in that area where we don't have a facilitator to be able to go out and do the trainings as frequently as we would like to. So we currently accommodate requests as necessary. However, from my standpoint, it's more of a liability issue that we need to be more proactive and build out these programs and help staff succeed. Currently, we're doing a lot of like reactive training, remedials, or training supervisors, especially since we've added departments. We've added, I think since I've gotten here in 2020, we've added 25 employees. So as that increases, that training need exists. Also, we have added the risk manager in 2021, and he currently oversees the risk department with WCIA and insurance claims. He oversees emergency management now and safety. And those are 3 very large jobs on their own. And so what I envision this position also doing part-time is assisting the risk manager in developing the safety program, delivering the safety trainings and tracking the trainings and certificates of people and where they're going to conferences, and maintaining a system is a big job for the amount of staff that we have. So that person would help track that. They would help with lower level claims management and assist departments in developing their training plans. Currently, Max is the risk manager. He hasn't had a lot of dedicated time to spend on emergency management functions, so this will free up his time to do more policy administration, emergency management planning. He's currently working on our CEMP, which is due this year, and additionally, he's looking at doing more training for ICS training. I think that will be coming soon to leadership, and ensuring that we have a volunteer cert team is one of his goals for next year. So we are prepared for whenever. So that would help shift his focus and allow him more time to do this. In the out years, actually, one more thing for 2024 is it's not on the org chart, but we have been talking internally in leadership about an internship program, and we would like to have interns in departments during the summer. And one way we're trying to allow that is to use salary savings to fund the interns. And right now the proposal is to have 4 of those positions for next year. We were unable to fill those positions this year because we didn't have any salary savings. However, that still remains a request that we allow that flexibility in that internship program for next year. And that would be based on department need, if we would like an intern. It's best who has the salary savings, and we work that out. In the out years, I thought a lot about, you know, as we grow and as we assume the sewer district and the needs are, and I envision us needing an HR manager, to help with just the growth of the city. And operationally, you know, we don't have any clerical assistants, and that most of the departments of, as we grow, have, more layers of support, such as finance department and a finance manager. That position would really help, me, allow me to do more strategic planning and policy administration for the city, as well as helping quality control, making sure service levels stay up to par for department needs. So and making sure that the HR staff, you know, are processing requests and make sure things are timely, and, you know, supervision takes a long time, so that would just help me a lot off my plate. And I don't think that's an immediate need. I think that's in the future as we continue to grow, that's why it's not a request, it's just part of the plan. And labor administration was the last reason. We have 3 contracts. 2 of them are overlapping right now, where we're negotiating 2 contracts at a time and trying to run the HR department. It's very difficult as the lead negotiator. So we have hired outside help, attorneys to assist in that, and we have department heads also helping. But that HR manager could be a labor/HR manager and help with that contract negotiations as well.
As far as the internship, if we don't have any staff saving for internship, is there a way to kind of fund that position just in general? I mean, we've got a lot of field data collection that in it, you know, and that is a perfect candidate for these internships, and we sorely need it. We can't keep up with it. So I don't know if we can like throw a bucket at it.
And we've discussed that. I think it comes down to priorities of full-time staff. We can look at that.
And if Barb's money tree started going.
Yeah.
If any of you haven't seen the money tree behind my office out my window, it's really
We've been
nice.
fertilizing
It's
it every
just
day. It's just
Not growing.
not producing.
I mean, there's a possibility we could advertise for an unpaid internship. I just don't know the quality of candidates, if that's really worth like what it would cost to actually have that person on board and assist them. But that's something we can track.
Curious, what about externship stuff with like ECC or something, positions for credit at school?
That's
Yeah.
kind of mostly for the GS, because a lot of the schools that have a GS, geographic information services degrees, they need probably credit for that, but the question, I thought it had to be a paid position, if there is a way to have, you know, that credit would be great.
There's still gonna be a program cost, so for, you know, equipment, and there is a offset cost for staff too. To make an internship program really be successful, you have to put like 50% of the work into that person.
Yeah.
And that's like by law, so you,
Have to actually teach them to do.
and so Troy's team, you would have to have time to dedicate to help train and make them educate them, that's the whole purpose of the externship.
Right.
So I think we have to look at that and make that up, but we did start working with a high school program through employment security department to get high schoolers in for short internships where they pay for it. We had talked about that a little bit last year, and that would allow like a 40-hour a week high schooler to come in a couple hours at the end of the day to maybe come help the clerk's office with records management and scan papers and learn about city government. And so we looked at that program. We didn't get quite to launch it before the end of the school year that last year, so we'll be looking at that for this. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just want to touch on the emergency management side of things. We currently contract with the county, but it's a big deal. You know, we have a natural disaster, like Stevens, we need to be prepared to take care of our own. Because the county's not going to come sweep in, they don't have the personnel, and so what does that mean to us? We mentioned the CERT trained community emergency response teams, and that's the community come in, get trained on how to do various tasks like windshield surveys, for example. You grid off the city, and one team goes and does a windshield survey, drive by, see if homes are collapsed, all that type of work, right? You report back. Our teams internally haven't had that training, how to lift loads with levers and things of that nature in case somebody's, you know, had a wall fall or anything like that. So that's the training we're talking about, and it's a big deal. And a lot of communities are further ahead than us, but we're going to get there. It's our goal to be able to take care of our
It's always a little awkward when you're talking about your own position. Nobody else has had to do that yet, but so a couple of things in the executive department that we're looking at, kind of a twofold. So the first one is really reclassifying the city clerk division and making it a municipal services division. One of the things that I've seen that I think we really need here is to bring together all of our communications and customer service into one division. So this would be taking the 2 receptionists out of another department, taking the community specialists out of another department, bringing it all into municipal services division, so that we have one centralized customer service division, one communication division. Right now, I think the receptionists are kind of filling out on their own a little bit, and the communications person's out doing the press releases, and the mayor's giving direction in the mayor's office. And if we were all one team, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's too piecemealed right now, and I do have some communication background. This really interests me. I think we could really set the city up for better success. And I think just again, that same messaging, whether they're the receptionist answering the phone or the communication specialist or the executive assistant in the mayor's office, we all are a cohesive team. So that's kind of the background to the municipal services division. But still, I would still be the city clerk and Caitlin would still be the deputy city clerk. And so kind of the duties of the division would still be council meeting administration, records, contracts, public records requests, communications, access to city services, executive support to the mayor and the city administrator, and then also policy management. So again, all of those things just have so much in common that it makes sense to be in its own division.
And we found this as a best practice in going to our clerks conferences and trainings, that there are quite a few positions that are municipal city manager / city clerks. So we're kind of seeing that that is a trend moving forward as far as delivery of customer service and communication to the public.
The office assistants reporting, well, what do they?
And they're in finance.
Okay.
And a little background on that, the office assistants used to be under city clerk when Norma was city clerk, and when Norma retired, we temporarily eliminated the city clerk position, and I became finance director, city clerk. And that's how they actually came under me. And then when we hired the deputy clerk at the time, we wanted to grow her in that position before she was ready to become city clerk. When she became city clerk, she wasn't as into the supervision side of it, and so I just kept them. But at this point, I actually think this is a great idea. I do feel like sometimes they're out on a little island, and I try to give them as much information as I can, but it's coming second, third hand. Whereas the city clerks and Caitlin work so closely with the mayor and Jean and the council, getting the information to them is a great idea. I just think I think it definitely makes more sense. And we've kind of always tried to go back in that direction a little bit, but I think the timing is actually good at this. And I have had this discussion with them as well, and they are on board.
Yeah, and the 2 receptionists, they do an amazing job. They have a really important role in the city. They are the first contact. They should be empowered with all of the information that they need to know. Like, and imagine if we were having these weekly meetings and direction was coming out from the mayor and the city administrator, and then it was trickling down through the communication specialist and then out to the receptionist, and everybody was on the same page.
And the grants and communications specialist now reports to us, right?
Yeah, so that's a fairly new position. She's only been here about 5 months. And so, but again, it just makes sense to have her be part of all that we're doing over here.
And she is part of it a lot naturally as well.
Yeah,
She and I work really closely together on legislative events and on press releases and on, that part of it. So there is some support that's happening now. It's just not formalized in that way.
Makes sense. Thanks.
I'd like to add, looking at it from like a Lean Six Sigma lens, this actually helps reduce waste by streamlining, communication and bringing them all in such a place, because they are all, each one of these positions that we're proposing to under this unit are like they said, scattered, and they're all getting information. We're wasting Barb's we're looking at it from a wasting Barb's time communicating the same piece of information that now Russ is communicating to the same person. And so if you think about it like that as well, it's going to reduce staff cost and staff time to get the same information. And And also the cohesiveness of the unit and the customer service, I think actually means a lot to the city, and it's gonna, we'll do a great job. And all the women in the positions.
And
So,
I don't see anybody's duties changing. I mean, the communication person would still do grants and work heavily with Russ and it's just more of, you know,
It's bringing everybody
What
into the
division?
same tent.
Yes,
that are doing
exactly.
similar
Providing
work
support.
and need the
Exactly.
The
And I think,
options provide centralized services to the city, not just
Yeah.
the one department that they're reporting to, and so that's the idea is anybody that is doing centralized city services are powered to work.
and I think the receptionist might want to do some other things too, like some special projects or things as they have time. And the mayor's always coming up with new great ideas, so.
Kind of a good idea.
You are.
That is something I've always expressed too, is they do look for, special projects sometimes, what can we do? And it's harder to have non-finance background people do finance special projects. And so it makes a lot more sense that they're the city clerk, records, communication, customer service type things. But they're still gonna be doing all the things that they're doing now, getting the mail, providing invoices and allocating those things. It's just the communication, I think, is key.
Absolutely.
And transparency, it's been our goal is to see more transparent. We have our every Monday morning staff meeting where we put together our flow chart of what we're doing for the week. They'll have access to that, right? So when the public calls in, if they've got questions about what we're doing, they'll have the information at their fingertips, so that transparency on it.
Just eliminates the, oh, and then we should probably copy this person. Oh, and then maybe the receptionist should know we're having regular staff meetings. Everybody's on know. Okay, I know I could talk about that all day because it just is exciting. The other part of this is establishing a public records specialist. So you hear Caitlin and I talk about public records all the time and records management because it just consumes a lot of our job. Records requests are increasing every single year, and I'm gonna have Caitlin talk about that in a minute. And we're just getting a lot more complex records requests, things where we have to review thousands of emails for one request. And it is taking a lot of time, and what it's taking away is time to really work on our citywide records management, which is what we really need to do. Like, we need to get things cleaned up and get our house in order. And I think we've been bogged down a bit with a lot of records requests that legally we have to respond to in a certain amount of time. So bringing in somebody else to help us with that citywide records management system for the city, working with IT as we're transferring everything over to SharePoint. Eventually, maybe an exciting day of not having any paper anymore, going digital, cleaning up what we don't need anymore, and then also just the help on the public records request side. So I'll let you talk about the numbers. If you want.
Yeah, we pulled some statistics from our past JLARC reports. We went back to 2019. So from 2019 to 2022, our request went. JLARC is the Joint Legislative Audit Records.
It's who we need to report to every year for how many requests we're getting, how much staff time, how much it's costing. All of that good
It's
stuff.
the report of how much time you spend on public records.
Yep, and so we did do some reporting back in, I think, July with those statistics for 2022. So from 2019 to 2022, our requests went up 31%. And which is pretty significant. Our staff time also went up from 560 hours in 2019 to 1,382. And that includes the police department as well, right? So it's kind of a holistic view. Year to date in 2023, I found very interesting because we can pull our numbers as we go through next request. And we've already had 1,214 requests this year, and we've spent almost 1,200 hours so far through the end of August. So
we're on track with 15.
Yeah, we're on track to continue that increase. We envision this person being able to help not just with the day-to-day tasks of reviewing records, but also, like Kelly said, the very kind of large goal of information governance. So being able to reduce how much paper we have, being able to do proper archival work and proper destruction from the electronic side, as well as the paper side, which is what we have. We also have brand new departments like Parks that has never had to do records management. And so their park staff are having to learn how to do records management work. And so we'd like that person to be a conduit for each of these departments to free up some of your staff and be able to help kind of run that work. So that's kind of our vision for this additional set of hands.
It seems like too, to have a public records specialist who knows the work inside and out and is really focused on that. Frees up your time to archive and get rid of records that then you don't have to sort through every time you get a request because they've been appropriately disposed of. And
Exactly.
Unless it's everyone's.
Because if we have it, we have to produce it.
Absolutely.
Even if
Yeah.
we're not supposed to have it or we
Right.
don't need to have it.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of us have inherited desks and inherited records with those desks, and then we move forward to try and get our important work done, and those things kind of carry on. So we would love to have that person to help with that.
And I can add one more comment. So it's also a structural organization. So we've inherited a file structure format that we've all lived with for, Herb's looking at me going, yep, for over a decade trying to manage. It's a mess. We have redundancies across department networks. So it's really how do we streamline what's happening in the background so we can all efficiently then in each department have a single repository that we know has good information, not redundant information.
That you can keep up on and that you
Correct.
can keep kind of clean yourself instead of, having a mess.
And part of the Public Records Act is having proper staff to be able to respond within a timely manner. So we want to make sure we're staying on top of that. And we're able to provide that as we grow and continue to see more requests come through. So that will help with liability in the public records world.
One of the increases we've seen that's been kind of interesting is lawsuits. So let's say there's a subdivision that goes in, it's a private subdivision and one of their contractors to sue them, their attorneys, instead of going through the discovery process, which is a legal process, they'll put in public records requests. So we're filling public records requests for private lawsuits. So they don't have to go through the discovery process and we spend a lot of time doing that.
We had one out of Snohomish this year for thousands and thousands of items of discovery
Yeah.
that we ended up having to find an IT solution to transfer that much information. And it really was us just being pulled into that lawsuit. So that was something we had to respond to. We had legal deadlines and we had to put everything else aside. So
Yeah, and I'll back that on that too, because they're the data managers, really, they're the ones supposed to set policies around the overall record schedule policies on governance and we have a project currently working and we need their time. And unfortunately, we're busy and we're always busy, and it's like, oh my gosh, and it's a stopgap for us. We don't get support. We can't build infrastructure that meets the needs, so that's my point.
I mean, real quick on the TBD, we envision if this department goes to municipal services management, if we were to add passport services, then that would go into this division as well. So it's listed under. Any questions? Okay. I'm gonna wrap up quickly because I know we are over our allotted time for this segment. So quickly, if this plan were adopted, here's some statistics on the number of FPGs. So that if we adopted the entire plan for 2024, we put us at 135 FTEs. And then if we approved all the positions on the plan in 2028 and the TBD, it would be 160.
Not counting sewer.
Not counting.
And that includes all the people that we truly support. Right now, we already have about 280 of these are all your phone commitments that have services and access and that IT can support. So it's that we're talking about full time.
Here's a quick snapshot, the cost per position with salaries and benefits were on each of the slides, but here's a quick breakdown, and I will say that this just includes salaries and benefits, this does not include equipment costs, cars, office equipment, IT, any of that. And it also assumes a 2024 COLA, and this is also a 1-year salary impact. So what you'll see later in budget requests, you'll see a Q2, like I want to start this position in Q2, and that's why the number will be different. So don't worry about the numbers maybe not matching. These are approximate estimates for a full total year.
So on your budget request going forward for each department, are we going to see equipage, vehicles, things like that, that match what they needed?
So the difference on there, we got total cost, you got general fund, and then you got the permanent generation fee. The big deal is the facilities field supervisor. Right? That's not being paid for anywhere. I mean, it's not a per day.
Oh, sorry, that was there. I believe that position would be mostly general with a little bit of streets.
A little bit of streets, a little bit of storm, but the majority of it would be general.
So you're looking at an impact of probably 150,000.
Back to Aaron for a second. Aaron, on your APWA certification, how much more time are we going to be spending on that this next year? Staff time.
A fair amount of time. I think we're gonna go through the audit process by the end of the year. So between now and the end of the year, hundreds of hours. Next year in terms of implementation of several hundred hours.
Next year,
Yeah, just sort of rolling this thing out, making sure that policies empower PMS and
any idea what this costs? In staff time.
you know, it's really hard to say.
I mean, if you're talking hundreds and
Between,
hundreds of hours.
probably between 15 and 30,000 hours.
Dollars or hours?
Dollars.
And this is going multi-departments are contributing to this, so we have to really pull how much time each department has. Policies, procedures together, getting those to max, it's power TMS, so
So-
it's.
Unfortunately, we did not track that starting.
So,
it's
so
really
Aaron,
difficult to
Aaron,
track.
roughly a week, what do you put?
Right now,
Hours
4 to 8 hours a week
in staff.
in my time, in terms of staff time.
What about
Probably
Max?
probably at around 40 hours.
Between all staff.
Yeah.
When we started this process, I think we were figuring about a year to get this done, right? Now we're on year 3. Next year.
No,
Is year 3.
2 years. 2 years, second year.
Yeah, 1 second. And we'll go, like I said, we'll go through the process by years.
So the next step is December. We have some folks come in.
Yeah.
See where we're at, let us know our deficiencies. Fix those deficiencies, and then next year is kind of that implementation process of all the stuff we put together as far as policies. And then after that, accreditation.
Is there a, other than the safety issue and the process issue, does that create a decrease in liability in the sense of insurance or anything?
No, we've asked that question. Well, there's no savings. But it really does, it does make our crews safer. It makes the public safer. And it does. Risk.
There's also like, I think that probably the biggest benefit that I see of it is it forces them to kind of think about business processes and getting things matured and that, and where everyone's trying to go is making operational efficiencies, and that's where we're all trying to go. So I think that's the biggest benefit, because when we had systems like this before, we had a single person that was trying to maintain this asset management system, they left, and that knowledge dropped. All the process and procedures gone. So we have to get this canonized, and we have to make sure that it's supported going forward. So
It really is a great program. You know, we get a new employee, for example, we get a crew under one. We'll assign them the